Jake Martinez pressed his nose against the transport ship's window and watched the massive space station grow larger. Harmony Prime looked like a giant spinning wheel made of metal and glass. Lights twinkled all around it like stars. He had never seen anything so big in his entire life. The other passengers on the transport were all aliens. Jake tried not to stare, but it was hard. There was a tall blue creature that looked like it was made of crystal. Another passenger had 6 arms and moved them all at once like a spider. The strangest one was just a cloud of purple gas floating in a clear container with mechanical legs. Jake pulled at his new uniform. The shirt felt too tight around his shoulders. Back home in Texas, he usually wore old t-shirts and jeans. This fancy academy uniform made him feel like he was playing dress-up. "Attention, passengers," came a voice over the speaker. "We are now docking at Harmony Prime. Please prepare for standard gravity adjustment." Jake felt his stomach drop as the artificial gravity changed. Everyone around him seemed fine, but Jake felt heavy and then light and then normal again. The aliens moved like nothing had happened. The docking bay was huge. Jake had never seen a ceiling so high. Hundreds of different aliens walked around. Some had 4 legs, others had wings, and a few floated in the air. Jake grabbed his single bag and followed the crowd. A tall alien made of what looked like living crystal approached him. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. "You must be the human student. I am Professor Veltar. Welcome to the Galactic Academy of Sciences." Jake shook the professor's hand. It felt smooth and cool. "Thank you, sir. I'm Jake Martinez. Come, I will show you to your dormitory and explain the basics." Professor Veltar walked with long, flowing steps. Jake had to hurry to keep up. They rode a moving platform through corridors filled with students. Jake noticed that most aliens were either much taller or much shorter than him. Some had huge eyes, others had no eyes at all. A few students stopped and stared at Jake as he passed. "Is something wrong?" Jake asked. Professor Veltar's crystal body flickered with different colors. "They are curious. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. Most students have never seen someone from such a dangerous planet." "Dangerous?" Jake laughed. "Earth isn't that dangerous. I mean, we have some storms and wild animals, but people live there just fine." The professor stopped walking and looked at Jake with what might have been surprise. "Your planet has predators that hunt your species. Your weather includes violent storms with destructive winds. Your ground shakes and splits open. Mountains explode with molten rock. How is this not dangerous?" Jake shrugged. "I guess you just learn to deal with it. My dad always says that if you pay attention and use common sense, you'll be okay." They reached Jake's dormitory room. It was small but clean, with a bed, desk, and a window that looked out at the stars. The gravity felt lighter than Earth normal. "Classes begin tomorrow," Professor Veltar said. "Your first class will be applied theoretical physics with me. Please review the basic principles tonight." After the professor left, Jake unpacked his few belongings. He had brought some photos from home, his baseball glove, and a few books. The photos showed his family's ranch in Texas, complete with horses and cattle. In one picture, Jake was standing next to his father after they had fixed the barn roof following a tornado. That night, Jake ate dinner in the academy cafeteria. The food was strange but not bad. He sat alone at first, but soon 3 alien students approached his table. The first one was small, with 6 thin arms and large black eyes. "I am Crix," it said in a high voice. "I am from Centauri 7. The second student was blue-green and moved like she was swimming through the air. "I am Lyra, from the Delphinian homeworld. We have heard much about humans." The third student was the purple gas cloud he had seen on the transport. Colors flashed across its surface as it spoke. "I am Zeth. My people communicate through light, patterns, but I have learned your spoken language." "Nice to meet you all," Jake said. "I'm Jake. This is all pretty new to me. What is it like on a death world?" Crix asked. His big eyes seemed even bigger with curiosity. Jake thought about it. "Well, it's home. We have nice days and bad days. Sometimes there are storms, so you stay inside. Sometimes it gets really hot, or really cold, so you dress right. There are animals that might hurt you if you're stupid around them, but most leave you alone if you leave them alone." The 3 aliens looked at each other. Lyra spoke first. On my world, the temperature never changes. The weather is always the same. We have no dangerous animals. My planet has very light gravity, Crick said. Nothing ever falls fast enough to hurt anyone. We solved all weather problems thousands of years ago. Zeth's colors shifted to what Jake guessed might be confusion. My people live in space. We do not understand how solid beings survive on planet surfaces at all. It's not that hard, Jake said. You just learn what to watch out for. My grandfather used to work on oil rigs, in the ocean during big storms. He always said that nature doesn't care if you live or die, so you better care enough for both of you. The next morning, Jake found his way to applied theoretical physics class. The classroom was large, with seats arranged in a circle. About 20 alien students were already there, all looking very serious and important. Professor Veltar entered carrying what looked like a glowing tablet. Today we begin with a practical assignment. This will test your understanding of environmental engineering and survival systems. Jake pulled out a regular notebook and pen. Every other student had advanced electronic devices that projected holographic displays. Your assignment, the professor continued, is to calculate the energy requirements and structural specifications needed to construct a habitat that could safely house your species on a planet with 2.5 times standard gravity, an atmosphere containing 15% methane, and temperatures ranging from -40 to +60 degrees Celsius. Around the room, students began making worried sounds. Crick's arms moved frantically over his display. Lyra's skin changed to a pale color. Zeth's purple cloud turned almost black. This will require advanced calculations, whispered one student. We'll need to access the quantum computers, said another. The methane alone makes this nearly impossible, Crick muttered. Jake raised his hand. Professor, do you want this to be a place where humans could live, or just my species in general? Your species, Mr. Martinez. Why do you ask? Jake looked around at all the worried alien faces. Well, this doesn't sound too different from some places on Earth. My cousin lives in Alaska where it gets really cold, and I've been to places where the air is pretty bad. Is this supposed to be a hard problem? The classroom went completely quiet. Every alien student turned to stare at Jake. Professor Veltar's crystal body flickered through several colors very quickly. Mr. Martinez, the professor said slowly, are you saying that these conditions would not require advanced life support systems for humans? Not really, Jake said. I mean, you'd want some heat and maybe an air filter, but people live in worse places back home. There's this town in Colorado where my uncle works at a mine. The air is thin and full of dust, it's cold most of the year, and everything is really heavy because you're up so high. People live there just fine. Crick raised one of his 6 arms. But the gravity alone would crush most species. How do humans survive in such strong gravitational fields? Jake shrugged. You get used to it, I guess. When I first got here yesterday, everything felt really light. I kept bouncing when I walked. This gravity you call standard feels like bouncing on a trampoline to me. The professor assigned the homework to be completed by the next class. As students filed out, Jake heard them talking in worried voices about computational requirements and theoretical frameworks. Several mentioned staying up all night to work on the problem. Jake packed up his simple notebook and pen. The assignment seemed pretty straightforward to him. He'd helped his dad build a storm shelter that had to be strong and keep out bad air. He'd been camping in cold weather and hot weather. The gravity thing was just like wearing a heavy backpack during football practice. As he walked back to his dorm, Jake wondered if maybe he was missing something important about the assignment. The other students seemed really worried about it. Maybe alien science was more complicated than human science. But then again, maybe living on Earth had taught him things that aliens never had to learn. Maybe being from a death world was actually useful for something after all. Jake sat in his dorm room that evening looking at the homework assignment he had written in his notebook. The problem seemed simple enough. Build a place where humans could live on a planet with heavy gravity, some bad air, and weather that got hot and cold. He had seen worse conditions during family camping trips. He pulled out his phone and looked at pictures from last summer when his family had visited his uncle's mining operation in Colorado. The miners worked in thin air, cold temperatures, and had to wear masks because of dust. They lived in small houses that were built tough to handle mountain weather. It wasn't that different from what the assignment was asking for. Jake started, sketching in his notebook. He drew a simple rectangular building with thick walls like the storm shelters back home in Texas. He added a basic heating system, similar to what his grandfather had installed in the old farmhouse. For the air problem, he remembered the filters his dad used in the workshop when he was welding. Jake wrote down, "Air filters like Dad uses," in the margin. Down the hall, Jake could hear voices getting louder. He stepped outside his room and saw that the alien students had gathered in the common area. They had spread their holographic displays across several tables and were working in groups. Crix was moving all 6 of his arms at once, calculating something on 3 different displays. His large black eyes were wide with worry. "The gravitational stress alone will require materials that don't exist yet," he said to the others. Lyra was floating near a display showing complex diagrams. Her blue-green skin had turned pale. "My calculations show that the atmospheric processing will need 17 different chemical filters working at the same time. The energy requirements are enormous." Zeth's purple gas cloud was flickering between dark colors. Light patterns flashed across his surface as he spoke. "I have run the numbers 4 times. The cost of building such a habitat would bankrupt most planetary governments." Jake walked over to see what they were working on. The displays showed incredibly complex designs with force fields, molecular processors, and systems he had never seen before. Everything looked like something from a science fiction movie. "What are you guys building?" Jake asked. Crix looked up from his calculations. "We are trying to solve the habitat problem, but it seems impossible. The conditions Professor Veltard described would kill most known species within minutes." "The methane gas is toxic," Lyra explained. "We need complete atmospheric isolation, with quantum-level air scrubbing. Even then, any system failure would be fatal." "The gravity is the worst part," added another student Jake hadn't met yet. This one looked like a tall insect with 4 arms. 2.5 times standard gravity would crush our bones. We need artificial gravity generators to create a bubble of normal gravity inside the habitat." Jake looked at their designs. They were amazing, but they seemed like using a spaceship to cross a river. "Why not just build it stronger?" he asked. "Stronger?" Crix's voice went even higher. "Jake, these are Deathworld conditions. No normal building materials could survive." "Sure they could," Jake said. "My dad built our storm shelter to handle tornado winds. Those can be over 200 miles per hour. He used concrete and steel rebar. It's been through 3 big storms and never had a scratch." The aliens stared at him. Lyra spoke first. "Your father built a structure to survive winds of 200 miles per hour, using primitive materials?" "Well, concrete and steel aren't really primitive," Jake said. "They're just basic. You make concrete strong by making the walls thick and using good rebar. It's not complicated. But the gravity," the insect-like student said. "How would you support a structure under such gravitational stress?" Jake thought about the oil rigs his grandfather had described. "You just build the foundation deeper and make the supports thicker. When my uncle built his mining equipment platform, he had to make it strong enough to hold machines that weighed tons. He used bigger concrete footings and more steel beams." Zeth's colors shifted to what Jake was learning meant confusion. "But what about the atmospheric contamination? 15% methane would be fatal to most species." "You'd need air filters," Jake said. "My dad has them in his workshop because of welding fumes. And some places on Earth have bad air naturally. People in big cities use air purifiers all the time. There are whole factories that clean dirty air. But those are small scale." Lyra protested. "This would need to clean the air for an entire habitat." Jake shrugged. "So you use bigger filters, or more of them. It's the same idea, just bigger." The group of alien students looked at each other with expressions Jake couldn't read. Finally, Crick spoke. "Jake, you are talking about this like it's a simple construction project. These are conditions that would require the most advanced technology in the galaxy." "Maybe for you guys," Jake said. "But humans live in places like this already. Not exactly like this, but close enough." "Impossible," said the insect student. No species could survive in such conditions without advanced life support. Jake pulled out his phone and showed them pictures from family trips. This is my cousin's place in Alaska. It gets down to 50 below zero in winter. That's worse than the -40 in the assignment. People live there all year. He swiped to another picture. This is from when we visited the sulfur springs in Yellowstone. The air there smells terrible and has lots of bad gases. People walk around just fine. Another picture showed his uncle's mining operation. This is where my uncle works. The air is thin because it's high up in the mountains. There's lots of dust, and everything is heavier because of the altitude. Hundreds of people work there, every day. The alien students looked at the pictures in silence. Finally, Lyra asked, "How do humans survive in such places?" "You dress warm for the cold places," Jake explained. "You use heaters and good insulation. For bad air, you use filters, or masks. For thin air, you just get used to it after a while. Your body adapts." "Your body adapts?" Crix's voice was almost a whisper. "Sure. Athletes train at high altitude because it makes them stronger. Mountain climbers go to really high places where the air is super thin. Divers go underwater where they can't breathe at all. Humans are pretty good at adapting to different places." Jake showed them more pictures. His family at a beach in Florida during a hurricane warning. His grandfather, working on an oil rig during a storm. His brother playing football in Texas heat that reached over 100 degrees. "What you call impossible conditions," Jake said. "We just call Tuesday." The aliens spent the rest of the evening asking Jake questions about Earth. They wanted to know about tornadoes, earthquakes, blizzards, deserts, and deep ocean exploration. Each story seemed to shock them more. "Humans climb frozen mountains for fun?" Zeth asked, his colors flashing rapidly. "Some do," Jake said. "My gym teacher climbed Mount McKinley last summer. Said it was cold and the air was thin, but the view was worth it." "You have storms that destroy entire cities and humans rebuild in the same place?" Lyra asked. "Usually," Jake said. "New Orleans got hit by a big hurricane and people moved back and rebuilt. Same with lots of places that get earthquakes or tornadoes. People just build better the next time." By midnight, most of the alien students were still working on their assignments. Their designs had become even more complex as they tried to create perfect safety systems for every possible danger. Jake went back to his room and looked at his simple sketch. He added a few more details based on what his family had taught him. Thicker walls for the heavy gravity, like the foundations his uncle used for heavy mining equipment. Better insulation for the temperature changes like what people used in Alaska. Bigger air filters for the methane like scaled-up versions of his dad's workshop filters. He wrote down some basic materials: concrete, steel, insulation, air filters, heaters, and coolers. The whole system seemed pretty straightforward to him. Jake fell asleep easily while his alien classmates worked through the night, trying to solve what they thought was an impossible problem. He dreamed about helping his dad build their storm shelter, not knowing that his simple, practical approach was about to change how the entire academy thought about problem solving. In the morning, Jake woke up refreshed and ready to present his solution. He had no idea that his classmates had barely slept, desperately trying to create theoretical solutions for conditions that humans had been living in for thousands of years. The next morning, Jake walked into the applied theoretical physics classroom and noticed that most of his alien classmates looked tired. Crix had dark circles under his big black eyes. Lyra's normally bright blue-green skin looked dull. Even Zeth's purple gas cloud seemed less vibrant than usual. "Rough night?" Jake asked as he sat down with his simple notebook. "We worked until dawn," Crix said, rubbing his eyes with 2 of his 6 hands. "This assignment is the most difficult problem I have ever encountered." "I had to access the Academy's main computer 3 times, Lyra added. "Even then, my solution requires technology that doesn't exist yet." Jake looked around the room. Every alien student had multiple holographic displays floating in front of them, showing complex diagrams, mathematical formulas, and 3D models that hurt his eyes to look at. Their presentations looked like they could fill entire books. Professor Veltar entered the classroom, his crystal body catching the light and throwing rainbows across the walls. I hope you all had productive evenings. Let us begin the presentations. Crix, you may go first. Crix stood up and all 6 of his arms began moving at once, manipulating his holographic displays. I have calculated that the habitat will require a complete atmospheric isolation system with 17 layers of molecular filtration, he began. The methane contamination necessitates quantum-level air processing with backup systems that activate if any single component fails. Jake watched as Crix's presentation filled the air with floating numbers, chemical formulas, and spinning 3D models. The math looked incredibly complicated, with equations that stretched across multiple displays. The gravitational stress requires artificial gravity generators positioned every 10 meters throughout the structure, Crix continued. These generators must maintain a stable field that counteracts the planetary gravity, while ensuring no interference patterns develop. The cost? Professor Veltar asked. Approximately 47 billion galactic credits, Crix replied. The construction timeline would be 8 years, requiring materials from 12 different star systems and a workforce of specialized engineers from multiple species. Several students in the class made impressed sounds. Jake thought 47 billion seemed like a lot of money to build what was basically a house. Lyra went next. Her presentation involved terraforming technology that could change the atmosphere of an entire planet. Rather than building a single habitat, I propose atmospheric processors that would convert the methane into breathable gases over a 50-year period, she explained. Her displays showed massive machines that looked like small cities. The gravity issue would be solved by installing planetary gravity dampeners at key points around the globe. This would reduce the surface gravity to acceptable levels for most galactic species. Impressive, Professor Veltar said. Cost and timeline? 120 billion credits, Lyra answered. Construction would take 15 years, but the result would be a fully habitable planet rather than just a single dwelling. Jake's eyebrows went up. They were talking about changing an entire planet just to make one place to live. It seemed like using a nuclear bomb to light a campfire. Zeth presented next, his colors flashing in complex patterns as he spoke. My solution involves a completely mobile habitat that hovers above the planet's surface, avoiding direct contact with the hostile environment. The floating city in Zeth's presentation looked amazing, with force fields and energy systems that Jake couldn't even begin to understand. The habitat would be self-sustaining, generating its own atmosphere, gravity, and power. It could move to avoid dangerous weather patterns and maintain perfect living conditions at all times. Cost? The professor asked. Approximately 200 billion credits and 23 years to construct. However, it would be the safest possible solution, with multiple redundant systems ensuring no possible failure scenarios. Jake listened to presentation after presentation. Each alien student had created solutions that seemed like they could solve problems for entire civilizations. They used words like quantum stabilizers, molecular processors, and gravitational field manipulators. Their budgets could have bought small planets, and their construction timelines stretched across decades. Finally, Professor Veltar called on Jake. Mr. Martinez, please present your solution. Jake stood up with his simple notebook and walked to the front of the class. He had drawn his design with a regular pencil on lined paper. Compared to the amazing holographic displays his classmates had shown, his sketch looked like something a child might draw. Okay, Jake began, feeling a little nervous. So, for the gravity problem, I figured you'd just build the foundation deeper and use thicker supports. My uncle builds platforms for heavy mining equipment, and he uses concrete footings that go down about 10 feet, with steel beams that are really thick. He held up his notebook so everyone could see his simple drawing. For a place where everything is heavier, you'd probably want to go down 15 or 20 feet and use bigger steel beams, maybe double the normal size. Several alien students looked confused. Crix raised one of his hands. But Jake, how would this counteract the gravitational forces? It wouldn't counteract them, Jake said. It would just be strong enough to handle them. Like if you know something is going to be heavy, you build the thing that holds it to be stronger. That's just normal construction stuff. Jake turned to a new page in his notebook. For the air problem, you'd want good filters. My dad uses air filters in his workshop because of welding fumes. For a whole house, you'd probably need bigger filters or more of them, maybe one in each room, plus a main system for the whole building. But the methane contamination would be fatal, Lyra protested. Right, so you'd need really good filters, Jake agreed. There are factories on Earth that clean up really bad air. Some places have air that's full of chemicals or smoke, and they use industrial air cleaners. You'd just use that kind of system, but for a house instead of a factory. Jake flipped to his cost estimates. For materials, you'd need concrete, steel rebar, insulation, air filters, heating and cooling systems, and regular house stuff like wiring and plumbing. I looked up prices online last night, and I think you could build it for maybe 200,000 credits. That's being generous and including really good filters and extra strong materials. The classroom was completely silent. Every alien student was staring at Jake like he had just said something impossible. 200,000? Crix's voice was barely a whisper. Yeah, maybe less if you buy the materials in bulk, Jake said. The most expensive part would probably be the air filtration system, but even industrial-grade filters aren't that expensive. And the construction timeline? Professor Veltar asked. His crystal body was flickering through colors Jake had never seen before. With a good construction crew, maybe 4 to 6 months, Jake said. That's assuming you have to pour the foundation, let it cure, build the frame, put up the walls, install all the systems, and do the finishing work. My dad and his crew built our storm shelter in about 3 months, and that had to be really strong to handle tornado winds. Jake looked around at all the shocked faces. Is that too long? I mean, if you had a bigger crew, you could probably do it faster. Professor Veltar was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. Mr. Martinez, your solution would actually work? Sure, Jake said. I mean, people live in worse places on Earth. There's this town in Alaska where my cousin lives. It gets colder. Then the assignment's temperature range, the air is thin because it's on a mountain, and everything has to be built extra strong because of the weather. People have been living there for like 50 years. But the conditions in the assignment are classified as uninhabitable by galactic standards, Zeth said, his colors shifting rapidly. Jake shrugged. Maybe by your standards. But humans live in lots of places that would probably be classified as uninhabitable. We've got cities and deserts where it's over 120 degrees, cities in places where it's 50 below zero, cities where the air is full of pollution, cities that get hit by hurricanes every year. People just learn to deal with it. You're saying that what we consider impossible living conditions are normal for humans? Lyra asked. Not normal exactly, Jake said. But not impossible either. Humans are pretty good at adapting to different places. If the air is bad, you filter it. If it's too hot or cold, you heat or cool your house. If the ground shakes, you build stronger foundations. It's not that complicated. The silence in the classroom stretched on. Jake could see his classmates looking at each other with expressions of shock and confusion. He wondered if he had somehow misunderstood the assignment. Professor Veltar finally spoke. Class dismissed. Mr. Martinez, please remain after class. As the alien students filed out, Jake heard them whispering to each other in their various languages. He caught fragments of conversation about impossible and Deathworld species. And how is this possible? Jake packed up his simple notebook and waited to see what Professor Veltar wanted to discuss. He had a feeling that his simple homework solution had just changed everything. After the last alien student left the classroom, Professor Veltar stood quietly for a long moment. His crystal body flickered through different colors as he seemed to think. Jake waited, wondering if he had done something wrong with his presentation. Mr. Martinez, the professor finally said, I need to understand something. Your solution to the habitat problem would truly work? Yes, sir, Jake replied. I mean, it's basically the same as building a house in a tough place. People do it all the time on Earth. Professor Veltar moved to his desk and activated a large holographic display. I want to show you something that might help explain my confusion. The display filled with information about Earth. Jake saw his home planet floating in space, looking blue and green and beautiful, but the text around it made his eyes widen. Planet designation, Earth. Classification, Class 12. Deathworld. Professor Veltar read aloud. Gravity, 1.4 times galactic standard. Atmospheric composition, 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, trace gases including carbon dioxide. Warning, oxygen levels toxic to most galactic species. Jake stared at the display. Oxygen is toxic? To most species, yes. Oxygen is highly reactive and corrosive. Most galactic species breathe noble gases or carefully balanced gas mixtures. Pure oxygen environments are considered industrial hazards. The professor continued reading. Geological activity, extreme. Tectonic plates in constant motion causing earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tsunami waves. Mountain formation ongoing. Magnetic field fluctuations cause radiation exposure. Surface conditions. Violent weather patterns including rotating storm systems with winds exceeding 200 miles per hour. Temperature variations from -80 to +140 degrees Fahrenheit. Precipitation including frozen water projectiles. And electrical discharge events. Jake listened in amazement as Professor Veltar described his home planet like it was some kind of nightmare world. Biological hazards. Planet supports aggressive predator species, venomous creatures, parasitic organisms, and disease vectors. Native plant life includes species that produce toxic compounds. Microbial life forms that cause fatal infections. Wait, Jake interrupted. That makes Earth sound horrible. But it's really not that bad. I mean, yes, we have storms and earthquakes, and wild animals, but people live good lives there. We have cities and farms and schools and everything. Professor Veltar's color shifted to what Jake was learning meant deep interest. That is exactly what I find remarkable. According to our classification system, no intelligent species should be able to develop on a Class 12 death world, much less thrive there. The professor pulled up more displays. Let me show you some comparison data. A new image appeared showing Crix's home planet. Centauri 7, Class 2, Paradise World. Stable temperature, regulated atmosphere, no geological activity, no dangerous weather, no predators. Gravity 0.6 times galactic standard. Another image showed Lyra's world. Delphinia Prime, Class 3, Garden World. Controlled climate, peaceful ecosystem, gravity 0.7 times standard. No natural disasters recorded in over 10,000 years. Most intelligent. Species in the galaxy evolved on Class 1 through Class 5 worlds, Professor Veltar explained. Humans are the first intelligent species we have encountered from any world rated above Class 8. Jake looked at the displays showing the peaceful, safe alien worlds. They looked beautiful but almost boring compared to Earth. So you're saying that most aliens come from places where nothing dangerous ever happens? Correct. Which is why your classmates' solutions were so complex. They were trying to create perfect safety systems because they have never had to simply adapt to dangerous conditions. Professor Veltar brought up Jake's homework sketch. Your solution assumes that humans can simply tolerate the dangerous conditions and adapt to them. This is unthinkable to most galactic species. But that's just normal for us, Jake said. My great-grandfather farmed in Oklahoma during the dust storms in the 1930s. My grandfather worked on ships during hurricanes. My dad builds stuff that has to survive tornadoes. People just learn how to live with whatever nature throws at them. Yes, Professor Veltar said, his colors brightening. And that is what makes humans extraordinary. Over the next few days, word about Jake's homework solution spread throughout the academy. Alien students and professors kept stopping him in the hallways to ask questions about Earth and human survival techniques. Jake found himself explaining things he had never really thought about before. Why humans could run for long distances, when most aliens could only move quickly for short bursts. Why humans could eat foods that would poison other species. Why humans could heal from injuries that would be permanently crippling to aliens. It's because Earth tried to kill us for millions of years, Jake told a group of students during lunch. So we got good at not dying. Crix had become fascinated with human mathematics. Your numbers are different from ours, he told Jake. When I calculate how to solve a problem, I try to find the perfect answer. But human math seems to focus on finding answers that work well enough with the materials you have. Well, yeah, Jake said. If you need to build a bridge, and you only have certain materials, you have to make it work with what you've got. You can't just say this requires perfect materials that don't exist. Lyra was amazed by human medicine. On my world, if someone is injured, they go into a healing tank that perfectly repairs all damage. But humans just bandage wounds and let their bodies heal themselves. Most of the time, Jake said. Human bodies are pretty good at fixing themselves if you give them a chance. We only use fancy medical stuff for really serious problems. Zeth was most interested in human emotions. His colors flashed rapidly when he learned about human responses to danger. You mean humans actually become stronger and faster when they are afraid? Sort of, Jake explained. When something dangerous happens, your body dumps chemicals that make you more alert and give you extra energy. It's called adrenaline. Helps you fight or run away. But fear is supposed to make you freeze and unable to think, Zeth said, his colors confused. Not for humans. Fear makes us think faster and move quicker. At least when we're in real danger. It's one of the ways we survived on a dangerous planet. Jake started spending his evenings in the common area, answering questions about Earth and human survival techniques. The alien students were amazed by stories that seemed completely normal to Jake. He told them about humans climbing mountains, just for fun, even though the air was thin and the temperatures deadly. About people swimming, in oceans full of dangerous creatures. About athletes who played sports in weather that would shut down most alien civilizations. Humans do dangerous things on purpose? Asked a student Jake hadn't met before. This one looked like a walking tree with silver bark. Some do, Jake said. My brother likes to go rock climbing. My sister does motorcycle racing. My cousin goes cave diving. People like challenges. But why? The tree-like student asked. Why seek out danger when you could be safe? Jake thought about it. I guess because we know we can handle it, and because it's fun to test yourself against something difficult. Plus, the dangerous stuff is usually the most beautiful. The best views are from high mountains. The most amazing fish are in deep, dangerous water. You have to take some risks to see the really cool stuff. Professor Veltar started attending these evening discussions. He would listen quietly as Jake explained human adaptability and survival instincts. Sometimes he would ask questions that made Jake think about his own species in new ways. Mr. Martinez, the professor said one evening, do you realize that what you describe as normal human behavior would be considered acts of incredible heroism by most galactic species? Really? Jake asked. But it's just normal stuff. I mean, firefighters and police officers and soldiers do dangerous things, but most people just live regular lives. Your regular lives include surviving conditions that would terrify most of the galaxy, Professor Veltar pointed out. You live on a planet that actively tries to kill you, and you not only survive but thrive. You build cities in earthquake zones and hurricane paths. You farm in areas prone to droughts and floods. You treat deadly weather as a minor inconvenience. Jake Sear was starting to understand why his simple homework solution had shocked everyone so much. The aliens weren't stupid or wrong to create complex solutions. They were just approaching the problem from the perspective of species that had never had to simply endure dangerous conditions. So when you guys saw the assignment, Jake said slowly, you thought it was asking you to create perfect safety in an impossible situation. But I just thought it was asking how to live somewhere uncomfortable. Exactly, Professor Veltar said. And that difference in perspective reveals something remarkable about human intelligence. You don't just solve problems through technology. You solve them through adaptation and endurance. That night, Jake lay in his bed thinking about everything he had learned. He had always thought of Earth as a normal, pleasant place to live. Now he was starting to realize that his home planet was considered a nightmare world by most of the galaxy, and that humans were basically the tough survivors who had learned to live there anyway. It was a strange feeling, but also kind of exciting. Maybe being from a death world wasn't something to be embarrassed about. Maybe it was actually pretty cool. 3 weeks after Jake's famous homework presentation, Professor Veltar made an announcement that surprised the entire academy. He was creating a new course called practical problem solving, and Jake would be helping to teach it. I don't know anything about teaching, Jake protested when the professor first mentioned the idea. You know more than you think, Professor Veltar replied. You understand something that most of the galaxy has forgotten. Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one that actually works. The new class met twice a week in a large workshop space that had been converted from an old storage room. Jake felt nervous the first day as he stood in front of 20 alien students, including all his friends from the original physics class. Today we're going to try a different approach to problem solving, Professor Veltar announced. Instead of seeking perfect theoretical solutions, we will focus on practical answers that can be built with available resources. Jake stepped forward, still feeling strange about being a teacher when he was supposed to be a student. So, the idea is to think about what you can actually do instead of what would be perfect to do. He had prepared a simple example. Let's say you need to cross a river that's too deep to walk through. What would you do? Crix raised one of his 6 hands. Construct a molecular transportation beam to teleport across. Build a gravitational bridge using force field generators, suggested Lyra. Create a localized atmosphere bubble and fly across, added Zeth. Jake nodded. Those are all really advanced solutions, but what if you don't have any of that technology? The alien students looked confused. But why wouldn't you use the best available technology? Asked the tree-like student whose name Jake had learned was Bark. Because sometimes you don't have it, Jake explained. Or it's too expensive, or it would take too long to build, or it might break when you need it most. Jake drew a simple picture on the whiteboard. Humans would probably just build a bridge out of wood or stone, or find a boat, or look for a place where the river is shallow enough to walk across. Simple solutions that work with basic materials. But those solutions are so primitive, Crix said. Primitive but reliable, Jake replied. A wooden bridge might not be as fancy as a force field bridge, but it won't stop working if the power goes out. Professor Veltar stepped forward. This is the lesson, students. Human solutions prioritize reliability and practical implementation over theoretical perfection. Over the following weeks, the class worked through dozens of practical problems. Jake learned as much as he taught, discovering new ways to explain human thinking to alien minds. When presented with the challenge of providing light in a dark space, the aliens suggested fusion-powered illumination systems and quantum light generators. Jake showed them flashlights, candles, and oil lamps. But what happens when your fusion generator needs maintenance? Jake asked. A candle will keep burning even if all your advanced technology breaks down. You're saying redundancy is more important than efficiency? Lyra asked. Sometimes, Jake said. My dad always keeps a toolbox with simple hand tools even though he has power tools for most jobs. Because if the power goes out or the battery dies, he can still fix things with a regular hammer and screwdriver. The alien students began to understand that human technology focused on multiple backup solutions rather than single perfect systems. They were fascinated by the concept of good enough engineering. Zeth was particularly interested in human decision-making under pressure. When humans face immediate danger, how do you choose between possible solutions? You pick the one that works right now, Jake explained. If your house is on fire, you don't design the perfect fire suppression system. You grab a bucket of water or call the fire department. You use whatever is available and deal with perfect solutions later. But what if the immediate solution is not optimal? Bark asked. Better to have a working solution now than a perfect solution that comes too late, Jake said. My grandfather used to say that a good plan today beats a perfect plan tomorrow. The class became popular throughout the academy. Students from other courses started attending, curious about these Deathworld problem-solving techniques. Even some professors came to observe. Jake found himself becoming more confident as he realized that his Earth background gave him a valuable perspective. He started sharing more stories about human ingenuity and adaptation. He told them about the Apollo 13 mission, where human engineers saved astronauts' lives by improvising solutions with random materials available on the spacecraft. About people who survived natural disasters using basic tools and quick thinking. about inventors who created amazing machines in garages using spare parts. Humans are really good at making do with what they have, Jake explained, because on Earth you often don't get to choose your circumstances. You have to work with whatever nature gives you. The alien students began applying human-style thinking to their own projects. Crix started designing mathematical solutions that could be implemented with standard computers instead of requiring quantum processors. Lyra began creating biological research proposals that used simple observation techniques alongside advanced scanning technology. Zeth surprised everyone by proposing a new type of space navigation system that combined sophisticated sensors with basic visual observation methods. If the sensors fail, navigators can still find their way using the techniques humans developed for ocean sailing, he explained. Professor Veldtar was amazed by the changes in his students. They are thinking more creatively, he told Jake. Before, they would accept that a problem was impossible if perfect solutions were unavailable. Now they ask what partial solutions might work. The Academy administration took notice of the class's success. They began incorporating practical problem-solving principles into other courses. Engineering students learned to design backup systems for their high-tech solutions. Science students practiced conducting experiments with basic equipment in case advanced instruments failed. Jake received a message from his family on Earth. His parents were proud to learn that their son was teaching alien students about human ingenuity. His father laughed when Jake described teaching aliens about hand tools and simple construction techniques. Sounds like those aliens could use a few summers working construction, his dad wrote. Nothing teaches practical problem-solving like having to fix a roof in the rain with whatever materials you can find. Near the end of the semester, Professor Veldtar gave the class a final assignment. I want you to work in mixed teams of human and alien students. Design a solution to a real problem facing one of our member planets. Use both advanced theoretical knowledge and practical implementation strategies. Jake was paired with Crix, Lyra, and Zeth to address water purification issues on a developing colony world. The colony had advanced purification technology, but it frequently broke down, leaving colonists without clean water for days at a time. The alien students immediately began designing improved high-tech purification systems. Jake suggested they also include simple backup methods that colonists could use when the main system failed. We could teach them to build basic sand and charcoal filters, Jake said, and show them how to boil water safely, simple techniques that work even without power or replacement parts. But those methods are not as effective as molecular filtration, Crix pointed out. True, Jake agreed, but they're better than no water purification at all, and they'll keep people alive until the main system can be repaired. Their final solution combined advanced technology with practical backups. The high-tech system would handle normal operations, but colonists would also be trained in simple purification methods and provided with basic materials to construct emergency filters. It's not just about having the best technology, Lyra said during their presentation. It's about making sure people always have options when their first choice doesn't work. Professor Veldtar was impressed with all the team projects. You have learned to think like engineers instead of just scientists, he told the class. Scientists seek to understand how things work. Engineers seek to make things work in the real world. On the last day of class, Jake's alien friends surprised him with a going-away party. He would be returning to Earth at the end of the semester, but they wanted to thank him for changing how they thought about problems. You taught us that being smart isn't just about knowing complex theories, Crix said. It's also about finding ways to apply knowledge in practical situations. And that sometimes the best solution is the one that actually gets used, not the one that looks most impressive on paper, Lyra added. Zeth's colors flashed in patterns that Jake had learned meant happiness. You showed us that surviving difficult conditions makes a species strong and creative, not weak and primitive. Professor Veldtar presented Jake with a special award recognizing his contribution to galactic education. Mr. Martinez, you have taught us that intelligence comes in many forms. Theoretical knowledge is valuable, but practical wisdom is essential. As Jake prepared to return to Earth, he felt different than when he had arrived.